Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents Playing with Fire by Bill Kitson, narrated by John Lee. Chapter 1. The moorland road was little used. Grass had encroached onto the middle of the tarmac as it meandered between scrubby banks of heather and gorse. Sheep strayed across, unfettered by walls, unthreatened by vehicles. The scenery was spectacular, savage and untamed. The only sign of human influence was a stationary car. Inside the vehicle, the encounter was over. The couple struggled to dress. As they wrestled with recalcitrant clothing, they talked. "I had news from Felling." She didn't need to ask who or what Felling was. She knew only too well. "And?" 3 months from now."
"God, that's soon. Why isn't it longer?"
"That's how it works.
It doesn't give us much time."
There's worse. He's coming here." She stared, disbelieving.
"I thought that wasn't allowed."
"They can't stop him."
"Aren't there rules?"
"They can't enforce them. He still owns the house."
"There'll be trouble."
The man drew a sharp breath. "If not, we're going to have to cause some."
"That won't be difficult."
"We should start immediately." His eyes were cold as she stated flatly,
"He ought to be dead."
"He soon will be. He'll be easier to get at outside."
"Will this interfere with your plans?"
"On the contrary, we can kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so to speak." She shivered, but it was a shiver neither of cold nor fear. It was a thrill she got from the power he exuded. She wriggled closer.
"Tell me what you have in mind."
Detective Mike Nash woke early. Last night had been a hell of a party. Maria had wanted Gino's birthday celebrated properly. Not a problem for the owners of a restaurant. Nash had drunk too much. Discomfort in his bladder told him so. That he could deal with. The hangover wouldn't be as simple. He tried to recall how the evening had ended. Gino had introduced him to someone. He'd been talking to them. Who was it? This thought disturbed him. He moved his leg. It brushed against something. Flesh. Nash panicked momentarily. As if alarm was contagious, the person alongside him moved slightly. Again he felt their skin against his leg. He eased himself out of bed and groped his way to the shower room, switched the light on and looked back. She was lying face down. The sheet did little to cover her. Nash admired her figure, the warm tones of her skin, her lustrous, long dark hair across the pillow. He fought against his rising excitement. She was undoubtedly young, appeared to be good-looking. She'd obviously come home with him. Equally obviously they'd gone to bed together. The next question was far trickier. Who was she? He returned to the bedroom. His earlier guess had been inaccurate. She wasn't good-looking. She was stunning. An image flashed through his brain. She'd been standing next to the bar, tall, elegantly dressed, laughing at some remark of Gino's. As she turned, she'd made eye contact with Nash. He stretched out alongside her. The touch of her skin completed his arousal.
"Hello, Michael."
Her voice, heavy with drowsiness, was husky with passion. He put his hand on her waist and began to caress her. Even as they made love, one problem remained. He couldn't remember her name. It was late when he woke again. There was a note on the pillow.
"Michael, had to go to work. Thanks for a wonderful night. We'll call you Kiss."
He appreciated the note, but her name would have been helpful. His glance strayed to the clock. 9:05. Nash groaned. He'd a meeting at 10. Where was Clara? As if in answer, the doorbell rang. He staggered out of bed and stubbed his toe. Swearing loudly, he struggled into his dressing gown and hobbled to the door.
"Christ, Mike, you all right? You look like death warmed up."
"Thank you, Sergeant Milanova, and good morning to you. Come in. You make coffee whilst I grab a shower."
"I'd better make it black to match your eyes."
"Don't be bloody cheeky," he snapped. Minutes later, Clara was seated at the kitchen table. Nash had showered, but still looked terrible.
"I hope you haven't been having nightmares again,"
she asked. "No, thank God. The doctor reckoned they were caused by mixing my medication with alcohol. One of the two had to go. It's obvious which you chose. Miranova glanced at the clock. We'd better go, or we'll be late. Any idea why we're wanted? None, but Tom implied it might be serious. Clara drove them to Netherdale, where Superintendent Tom Pratt was based. During the journey, she continued her interrogation. What was it? A late session at the Horse and Jockey, or have you been on the nest? If I'd to guess, I'd say you've been at it all night. You look shagged out. I like the delicate, polite way you express yourself. Clara grinned. Who is it? Anyone I know? I'm not sure. You're not sure whether I know her, or you're not sure who she is? There was a long silence. She laughed. You're the last of the great romantics. You mean to tell me you picked a girl up, took her home, and you don't even know her name? I'm not aware that I told you anything, Nash muttered. Anyway, it wasn't like that. Clara bit her lip. Go on, Mike. Tell me what it was like. Despite severe provocation, Nash remained silent for the rest of the journey. Morning, Mike. You look a bit rough. Are you okay? Tom, don't. I'd enough problems with Clara. Any more lip from her and I'd be tempted to send her back to Belarus. Miranova grinned unrepentantly. What's the panic about? Nash asked. I had a call from the governor of Felling Prison. They've a prisoner coming up for release, and it could mean trouble. Who is he? His name's Vickers. I've read the case notes. Very nasty. What's he in for? He raped and murdered the daughter of his living lover. He got life, but he'll be out in 3 months. Was it round here? Yes. They lived in Helmsdale. Her body was found in the woods by the banks of the Helm. They'll not let him come back here, surely, Miranova interjected. He insists on coming back. I thought they could block that. The trouble is, Vickers isn't dependent on housing or social services. He's got money and he owns a house. Pratt paused before adding, on Grove Road. Grove Road? That's on the edge of the Wesley. Nash knew there was more. You'd better tell us the rest, he prompted. The girl Vickers murdered. Pratt cleared his throat. She was Jake and Ronnie Fletcher's niece. Oh, hell, they'll fillet the bastard, Miranova muttered. There have already been death threats. The governor told me they're all postmarked from round here. He was attacked several times. The worst was a stabbing that nearly finished him off. The governor suspects someone might have bribed inmates to have a go. Strangely, they stopped after a few months. I wonder why he insists on returning. If he'd any sense, he'd stay well clear, Nash said. We've got 3 months to dream up a strategy to keep him alive. Vickers always maintained he didn't kill the girl. Complete nonsense, of course. The forensic evidence puts it beyond doubt. He didn't defend himself at his trial. In fact, he didn't say anything. I want you to study the file. Maybe go to Felling as well. He looked across at Nash. Persuade Vickers to think again. Suggest he goes elsewhere. Tell him if he returns to Helmsdale, we don't give much for his chance of survival. The wagon and horses was built during the 1960s. It was ugly and looked dated before the paint dried. Time frequently softens the harsh lines of a building. Here, time failed miserably. Not that the regulars cared. Had the beer been sour or the lager flat, that would have been different. The room was busy, as befitted a Friday night. The atmosphere was heavy with cigarette smoke and other more exotic aromas, despite the government ban on smoking. The corner seat was occupied by a well-known trio, well-known and feared. There were a few hard men in the bar, yet Jake and Ronnie Fletcher were of a different calibre. If Gemma Fletcher wasn't feared like her brothers, she was equally respected. Gemma outlined her problem. Ronnie was all for direct action. That was typical. His rash nature had landed him in trouble several times, one resulting in a custodial sentence. Gemma wasn't prepared to risk that. "You can't, Ronnie," she objected. "I'm not having you sent down over that pillock." Jake represented a more chilling threat. Hatred quivered through his voice. "No, Gem. We've got to finish him. If the law won't, it's up to us. We'll make him suffer. When I think of our Stacey—" "Leave me alone with the twat," Ronnie growled. "I'll deliver his bollocks on a platter."
"Listen,"
Gemma insisted.
"I'm not risking either of you going inside. We need another way, and I think I know one."
"It had better be good, Jem," Jake muttered angrily.
"We're all agreed as to what we want, right?"
The brothers nodded.
"Anything happens to him, they'll automatically suspect us."
She didn't have to explain who they were.
"Here's what I suggest."
Jake and Ronnie listened with admiration. There was no doubt it would work, but then Gemma had always been the brightest. That's why she'd made a successful career in advertising, whilst they sweated and toiled as jobbing builders. "That's brilliant, Gem. But who's going to do it?" Ronnie was keen to know.
"I thought Danny and the juniors might be up for it."
Jake whistled.
"Christ, Jim, that's genius.
With Danny on our side, think what his brother Billy might do." Ronnie agreed. "Given half a chance, Billy'd have the whole town in ashes." "I'll buy him the petrol and matches," Jake agreed. "When do you want to start?"
"Straight away."
"But you said he wasn't due out for 3 months."
"If we start now, there's a chance our incident will be passed over as part of it." "Oh dear, what a bleeding shame. Not to worry, he won't be missed."
"If Danny and the juniors get going, there'll be bloody riots."
"Don't you see? That's what we're after."
When Gemma left, she was satisfied her brothers would already be implementing the plan. She climbed into her car and reached for her mobile.
"It's me," she said. "Can you talk?"
"Yes. How did it go?"
"Fine. I told you it would. What about your end?"
"I've a meeting tomorrow. I'll know better after that. I'll ring you when I'm sure." Chapter 2. J.T. Tucker's work was read wider than the circulation of the Netherdale Gazette. Syndication took it throughout the north of England. Tucker was in the graveyard, the basement where old copies were stored. Computerization hadn't reached the repository of the newspaper. Researchers still had to wade through files of back numbers. Although Tucker churned out weekly articles of general interest, he occasionally produced excellent pieces of investigative journalism. He'd a keen nose for impropriety. This, combined with his contacts, a good memory, and hours of research, led him to uncover misdeeds which many would have preferred to remain unearthed. His articles had caused ripples within local politics, business, and even the church. Tucker was on the scent of another such scandal. So far the aroma was faint, but to Tucker, unmistakable. Time and patient probing could cause the stench to ripen. On the desk were back numbers of the Gazette, folded to reveal 2 articles on the same topic. Thursday, 12th August, 1993. Police confirmed today that the body discovered in remote woodland was that of missing photography student Stacey Fletcher. Forensic examination would be needed to establish how she died. Tuesday, 8th March, 1994. A jury at Netherdale Crown Court today convicted Gary Vickers, a 25-year-old graphic artist, of the rape and murder of his lover's daughter. The body of 20-year-old Stacey Fletcher was found in Helm Woods last August. She had been sexually assaulted and strangled. Traces of Vickers' DNA were found on the dead girl's clothing and body. The judge, approving the verdict, warned Vickers that he would be facing the maximum sentence for this crime. Sentencing will take place next week. Tucker was unaware that the official version of these events was being studied a few miles away. Clara was examining a photograph of Vickers when she heard Nash muttering.
"Sorry, what was that, Mike?"
"There's something odd here. The evidence is overwhelming. Vickers' semen was removed from inside the dead girl's vagina and on her pubic hair, and from the sheets on her bed as well. Considerable quantities, not just traces. They also recovered his pubic hair. If that's not the clearest possible proof, I don't know what is. So why has Vickers consistently denied raping her? He'd have to be stupid to go against that evidence, and from what we know about Vickers, he isn't stupid.
Maybe he thought by admitting to rape he'd be confessing to murder as well."
What mileage was there in not pleading guilty? He might have caught the judge in a lenient mood. He could have claimed provocation, suggest the girl seduced him or something. Plenty of others have tried that. Some have got away with it.
You've just read the evidence out loud. There's no way Vickers isn't guilty.
You're probably right, Clara, but the more I read this file, the more questions it throws up. Clara sighed. She knew Nash well enough to realise if he got his teeth into something, he wouldn't let go. She'd also enough experience of his insight to be cautious about contradicting him. He'd been proved right too often.
OK. What don't you understand?
Imagine you're Vickers and, for the sake of argument, pretend you didn't rape or kill the girl. Beyond entering a plea of not guilty, he didn't say anything in his defence. All his counsel did was question the arresting officers and the forensic experts. He didn't call any witnesses or put forward an alternative story. So why not plead guilty? If Vickers truly was innocent, why not say so? Why wait until after he'd been tried and sentenced? And why kick up such a fuss later? Perhaps he was bored. He was banged up alone in a cell for 23 hours a day. As a reason for the campaign he waged, I find that a bit thin.
The evidence is overwhelming, Mike.
Have you anything to suggest he might not be guilty? Nothing. All I can see is a lack of evidence.
From what you've said, I thought there was too much rather than too little.
There is and there isn't. There's plenty of evidence of sexual activity, but if Vickers raped Stacey, where's the other evidence?
What other evidence?
Why does the PM report fail to mention bruising? Rape victims almost invariably have bruises to their arms, their body, their legs. They often have gag marks or bruising from a hand across their mouth. There's no mention of any defensive injuries. Why not? If he'd drugged her first, I could understand it. I checked the toxicology. There's no evidence of drugs in her system. Perhaps he didn't need to keep her quiet. Maybe the rape took place somewhere he knew they wouldn't be disturbed. Nash shook his head. The rape took place in her room. We know that from forensics. That's another fact that doesn't add up. If he raped her in her bedroom, why take her to Helm Woods before he killed her?
He could have killed her at the house, then transported the body afterwards.
No, he couldn't. Vickers didn't own a car. Besides, there were no bloodstains at the house, but plenty in Helm Woods. Incidentally, there's also nothing to suggest there were bloodstains on any of Vickers' clothing.
Anything else?
In the vast majority of rape cases, the killer strangles his victims with his bare hands or an item of their own clothing. According to the evidence, Vickers garroted the girl with piano wire, hence the blood.
So he wanted to be different.
You've missed the point, Clara. Not that I blame you. You haven't seen this. Nash passed her a sheet of paper, an inventory of the furniture at Vickers' house. There's no mention of him owning a piano. What's more, the prosecution couldn't produce proof of Vickers buying any wire. The arresting officer made a note of it alongside the inventory. It reads, "Where did the wire come from?" I guess that got deliberately overlooked by the prosecution, and his counsel didn't pick up on it. Clara conceded the point reluctantly.
It's intriguing, I grant you, but it still doesn't amount to much.
There's another thing about the wire. If Vickers did buy piano wire, that argues premeditation, as does taking her into Helm Woods to kill her. So how did he persuade her to go with him? The prosecution case is that Vickers got overcome with lust, raped her, and then got scared she'd tell her mother. Knowing that, he panicked and strangled her. There's a huge contradiction in that argument.
I see what you mean, although it isn't conclusive. What do you intend to do?
Nothing until we've spoken to Vickers. I want to look him in the eye before I form a judgment. There was another curious fact Nash had noticed about the case, but he decided to keep it to himself. Nash's mobile chirped to signal an incoming message. He read the text slowly and groaned.
Bad news?
Not really. At least, I don't think so. He read aloud. Michael, going to France on business. Back Friday. What about weekend? Kiss. Clara fought to restrain her laughter. That sounds like good news. It would be, if I could remember the girl's name.
Where did you meet her?
Gino's 40th birthday party.
You know, from La Gioconda. The answer's simple. Go to La Gioconda and ask Gino. I can't do that. Most of the guests were either his or Maria's family. Oh, sorry, I didn't realise. That could be difficult. I don't suppose it's etiquette in Italian society to say, "Had a great time at your party. Afterwards, I gave your cousin a good shagging. Would you tell me her name?" Not if you want to stay healthy, it isn't.
"First time you've visited Felling?" the prison officer asked Nash and Miranova. Nash nodded. "My job usually finishes when the judge passes sentence. That happened to Vickers a long time ago."
What's he been like?
A pain in the arse. Nobody likes Category 43s, even when they're quiet, and Vickers certainly hasn't been quiet. Forever writing letters and trying to stir up a campaign to prove his innocence. He pestered anyone he thought might show an interest. Not that it did any good.
The others gave him a hard time, I understand.
Funny you should say that. There was a load of aggro in the early days. Usual treatment. His food was doctored regularly. Not the usual stuff, though. 3 times he'd to be pumped out. Been poisoned. He was beaten up 6 times, knifed twice. In the worst incident, he nearly died. He was on life support for 3 days. After that, he was watched pretty carefully. Then suddenly the trouble stopped, almost as if someone had ordered it. I mentioned it to Vickers and he laughed. He said, "Oh, it won't happen again. I've arranged it." And you know what? He was right. As you say, they go out of their way to make life unpleasant for sex offenders, but I can't explain why Vickers escaped the treatment. It's almost as if they thought he got a rough deal. Why they should think that, God knows.
That's interesting.
They're not usually far wrong. That's what intrigues me. Even now I have doubts.
Why?
About 6 months back, I read the story in one of those true crime magazines. It carried a photo of the girl. Stacey, wasn't it? I got a hell of a shock when I saw it.
Why?
Because I'd seen that photo. Vickers keeps it in his cell. He has a stand-up photo wallet. Photo of his parents on one side, the girl on the other. I know all sex killers are perverts, but I've never heard of one keeping a photo of his victim. Maybe a porno type, but this is more like a photo you'd keep of your wife or girlfriend. I reckon it'd take a really sick man to keep a photo like that. However hard I try, I can't make it fit with the Vickers I know. Anyway, you'll meet him in a few minutes. Judge for yourselves.
Nash waited until they were on the return journey before asking Clara,
"What do you make of Vickers now?"
"I don't know. I came away wondering if we'd achieved anything, or if our visit was a waste of time. I keep wondering if we've actually met the real Gary Vickers."
"You mean because he was so quiet?"
"Quiet? Mike, I've known deaf mutes make more noise. He never volunteered a statement, made a spontaneous remark, or contradicted us. Where was the troublemaker who continuously made a nuisance of himself? Where was the man who pestered the press, the radio and TV? Where was the angry man who wrote screeds of letters asking to be cleared? Above all, why did he sit quietly in front of us and failed to protest his innocence? All he did was stare at us and answer in monosyllables."
"Yes, I found that intriguing. He was obviously not scared of us. But then, why should he be? The law's already punished him. As to why he didn't proclaim his innocence, he probably reckons he'd be wasting his breath, seeing who we are. But I agree. I reckon we're a long way from having met the real Gary Vickers, let alone finding out what makes him tick. There's one question I'd have liked to have asked, but it'll wait until Vickers feels able to talk freely."
"What was that?"
"I want to know why Vickers made all that fuss. You just listed the people he canvassed to get his case looked at. There's one glaring omission, and frankly, I'm at a loss to explain it."
"I don't follow you."
"We know Vickers is well off. The file says he got a big insurance payout after his parents were killed. Plus, his father had life cover on the mortgage, so that got redeemed. Vickers has paid for a property maintenance company to look after the house whilst he's been inside. That won't have been cheap. In other words, he has ample resources at his disposal. So why has he never appealed against his conviction? If he's as innocent as he makes out, that would be the first thing he'd want to do. Does that mean you think he is guilty?" "No, that's not what I'm saying. On balance, I believe he probably is.
But there's a whole raft of unanswered questions, and that's making me uncomfortable. If he isn't guilty, why not appeal? Why court the publicity when he knows it won't lead anywhere? Nash thought for a moment. Unless he was sending a message. You heard what the prison officer said about the attack stopping suddenly. Perhaps there was an order given for them to be discontinued. Maybe Vickers did all that protesting to let people know he was on their case. Why on earth would he do that? One reason would be to stop the punishment he'd been getting. If that was so, it worked. And it would explain why Vickers was so confident he wouldn't be attacked again. Apart from that, I'd only be guessing. Perhaps he kept quiet during his trial and didn't go for a formal appeal, because that would have required him to give evidence. If he remained silent because he was shielding someone, that might explain his actions. I checked the file after we talked to the warder, and guess what? All the fuss Vickers made began after he was attacked. Sorry, I don't see how that's significant. Suppose Vickers was protecting somebody and found out that the person he was shielding had paid someone to top him. He had death threats, remember? That might have been the spark that set him off on his campaign. But his campaign fell short of an appeal. That ties in with him sending a message. An appeal needs solid evidence. Vickers isn't stupid. He'd know he didn't stand a chance of clearing his name. So he doesn't appeal. He just makes a nuisance of himself. If I'm right, that also explains his insistence in returning to Helmsdale. You think he has an agenda? Yes, and I've an idea what it is. I think Vickers wants to settle matters with whoever ordered him to be killed. I think he believes they're responsible for the girl's death. You really have serious doubts about his guilt, don't you? In some ways I do. What the prison officer told us about the photo worries me too. That's not the action of a guilty man. There's one thought that scares the pants off me, though. What's that? You remember I asked him why he wants to come back to Helmsdale? Although he didn't reply, he was looking at me as I said it. There was an expression in his eyes I found frightening. It was the closest I came to getting a reaction from him. What sort of expression? It was like a boxer before he steps into the ring, or a soldier going into action, psyched up for the battle ahead. Unless I read him wrong, Vickers is going back, expecting there to be trouble. In fact, I believe he'll provoke it. Maybe he no longer cares what happens, or maybe he sees it as the only way the truth will come out. Either way, I'm sure of one thing. We're in for one hell of a summer. Chapter 3. Councillor Appleyard speaking. Carl Rathmell here. I thought you might like to join me for lunch at my place. I'm inviting 1 or 2 friends. I believe our discussion might prove mutually beneficial. What do you say? That's very kind. When do you suggest? Are you free tomorrow? When Appleyard arrived, the gravel sweep in front of Rathmell's house was almost full. Alongside several luxury cars were some run-of-the-mill vehicles, including a worse-for-wear Toyota pickup. Rathmell opened the door. Good afternoon, Councillor. We're in the drawing-room. Follow me. Appleyard glanced round the wide hall. Everything suggested wealth, status, and power. He'd heard that Carlton Rathmell, member of European Parliament, had married into one of the richest families in the county. Seemingly, the report wasn't exaggerated. Heads turned as they entered. Appleyard recognised several guests at a glance. His host performed introductions. As Appleyard joined in the social chit-chat, he speculated on those present. Rathmell's agent seemed the most obvious. The 2 businessmen, heads of local electronics and plastics firms, were no surprise. Slightly more obscure was the presence of a trade union convener, a man well known for his outspoken views. 2 others seemed totally out of place. Jake Fletcher, a building contractor with a reputation for toughness who'd worked on several of Appleyard's properties. Their business relationship had been more than satisfactory. Appleyard couldn't imagine how Rathmell was acquainted with the builder whose upbringing on the Wesley Council estate was a world away from these surroundings. The last guest caused Appleyard to give up speculating. Why Rathmell would need an alliance with a senior police officer, he couldn't imagine. The conversation over lunch was more small talk,
although here and there politics entered via questions from one or other of the diners. Rathmell and Appleyard were naturally expected to reply.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?